Driving in a car. We're right now outside of Boston. We're returning to New York from the Camden International Film Festival. We're near Lowell, Mass., the hometown of Jacques Kerouac.
Wow, that's right.
Ah, oui. He is a French Canadien.
The man who didn't write, he typed.
He was pretty remarkable, though. I don't know. Have you ever seen him read his from On the Road?
Actually, I have not. And I did read the book when I was a teenager.
Okay.
It's almost meant to be read.
Out loud, yeah.
It's spoken word poetry.
It's called like Alan.
Is there
And,
a recording of it? Like one of those...
Well, I tell you, there is, if you go to YouTube,
Yes.
there was a talk show host who had a television show in the early 60s, and he played the piano, and his name was...
Are we still playing the Trivia Pursuit game?
Yeah, I'm trying to remember his name. Price? No. Alan... I'm having yet another senior moment. But anyway, he had...
What's the show?
I'm forgetting the name of the show. He also...
Talk show host?
Yeah, Jack
Parr.
Parr. Jack Parr.
Oh, he was after Steve Allen, the second host of the Tonight Show.
I didn't really know
Before
that.
Johnny Carson and
right.
after Steve Allen.
But he...
You have to turn right then.
Yeah.
So he had... He had Kerouac on as a guest, and it's an amazing sequence. He's playing the piano, Jack Parr, and Kerouac is reading from On the Road. It's kind of, it's definitely beatnik, and he's a good piano player. He's sort of a improvisational jazz, and it's beautiful.
Steve Allen was a piano player. He wrote songs, and Johnny Carson. Did he play piano? I don't know. Anyway, but that's
Johnny Carson, I think, originally was a stand-up comedic, if I recall.
Well, before that, he may have been. He was like also did commercial spokesperson and game show host.
Game show host?
He did all the requisite, like television spokesperson things before you. Yeah, I think there were a couple of game shows. We are heading on to I-90. Are we on I-95 still?
We're actually on 495. We're circumventing Boston.
Right. It does sort of
on our way back to New York.
Crescent-shaped highway. And it runs over the Mass Pike, right?
Maybe under.
Or under. It intersects, and
That's big truck.
For 29 kilometers.
Are we rolling?
Yeah. Hello, Michelle.
That was a very, very big truck that just passed us on the highway. Did you get it? Did you pick it up?
Probably. So if the listeners haven't quite put it together, we are in a vehicle, as you mentioned before. We're heading to New York City from Camden, Maine.
From Camden, Maine.
Did you enjoy yourself?
Yeah, I did. I think it's a terrific festival.
Me too.
It's the first time I'd ever been
Me too.
to the Camden Film Festival. Yeah. It's an incredible location. Right on the coastline, with 3 small towns that are quite close, quite connected, i.e. Rockland, Rockport, and Camden, and they're incredibly pretty. And they have 5 or 6 different venues where they show films from Thursday through Sunday. Yeah.
And you premiered your most recent film at this particular festival, so that's where you had your world premiere.
Right. No, it was
My Autonomous Neighbor.
Right, exactly. And it was the perfect place to world premiere My Autonomous Neighbor for...
It was.
The primary reason I say it was the perfect place was that Tate Billings, the subject of my film, the outsider artist, he lives in Sullivan County, which is... on the Catskills, but he's originally from Rockland, Maine. So not only did we premiere the film at the Camden International Film Festival, but the showing was at a movie theater in downtown Rockland that he used to go to as a child. It's called the Strand. And the Strand was, I think 5 or 10 years ago, I forget exactly, was renovated. And it's a really fantastic...
It was renovated? So
Yeah.
it didn't look like... Because it didn't look like a Walgreens to me.
It looked like an old art house movie theater to me.
I'm referencing so many theaters were turned into
No, it's
drugstores.
It's a theater that
Yeah,
has a
it is
tremendous amount of character, and at the same time, a state-of-the-art projection and sound. So,
Right.
it was terrific. It was really fantastic, and we had a huge turnout, which I was very pleased about.
Uh-huh.
And I thought the screening was great.
And I noticed you didn't ask me to moderate your what could possibly have been better.
Well,
than me
I know.
You have even a deeper connection with somebody that you...
Well, I originally thought that you would be the moderator.
Oh, no.
But
I was kidding.
then, honestly, I did. But then I think it was Ben Fowley, the director of the festival. I told him that Ross McElwee was going to come to the festival, and Ben was the one who suggested that he moderate
that's a good
the
choice.
Q&A. A, because I've known Ross McElwee for 40 years, and B, he's a great filmmaker, and I thought he did a great job.
He did.
He did.
Yeah. No, it was great to see you guys, and along with Tate, your film subject. There was a nice convergence of connectivity there.
Right.
With the location, everything is just really worked out exactly the way it should have. And the audience really was very happy. And it was even paired with a marvelous short, because your film is about 40 minutes. And
No, it's 62 minutes long, my film.
Why did I think it was shorter than that?
Because it's high energy.
That's what it is. 40 minutes is just go, go, go.
Yeah. No, and the short film was terrific. It has a title that I can't pronounce. Okay.
But it was about a barstool philosopher, or a bartender philosopher in this
Right.
case.
Yeah, and he was quite remarkable, because at first I thought it was a little stereotypical, and then the longer he was on screen and the more we heard from him, kind of the more surprising, some of his philosophical statements and his worldview. I thought it was very poignant and funny, and in many respects a perfect companion piece to my film, My Autonomous Neighbor. So that also worked out beautifully well.
Not that anybody can guess this, but you have a co-director on the film, right?
Right.
Craig Lowy.
Craig Lowy, yes. And he's actually in the car with us.
Wait a minute, what? Where is he?
It's true. I actually am in the car.
So we're
How
all
did that
traveling
happen?
back to New York together.
That's amazing.
Craig
Keep your eyes on the road, Craig, if you're driving.
Yeah, Craig did the visual effects, and there are a number of them in my film.
It's very prominent.
It's a very prominent part, and was a very, very important collaborator. And I think by the time we got to the end of making this film, it just occurred to me that there's a lot of Craig's DNA in this movie, and that he really deserves to be credited as the co-director. So that was
very generous of you, because I never would have done that. My narcissistic nature. Craig Lowy, producer of this particular segment, did you look up the short by any chance? Did you do that?
I did. And here's the name if anyone can read it.
The Magnitudius Illuminus. Did I get that right?
I close enough.
It's an expression of his.
Yeah,
and he does have made up expressions.
That's right. What's the other one
film?
with that drew the most laughs?
The Hemnitz. The Hemnitz.
That's
the Hemnitz.
And that's a sort of a crash of two different authors, Hemingway and Nietzsche, that for some reason he objects to. I'm not sure why.
I think that means that you have a negative spirit or a negative persona or down. I think that was what he meant. I would have loved to be called a Nemich or whatever it is. It sounds right.
Since we brought it up, we'll mention the two filmmakers behind it. Rachel Mills is one, because I met her last night. And who's the other one? Tate and I were talking to Rachel. Tate was very animated and excited about meeting one of the directors of that. Why didn't it go to?
It's not. It's.
I don't know how to.
Never mind. It didn't work.
Okay. Well.
I'll find it.
Okay. We're going to get back about that. We may as well plug that short. But anyway, so the other connection, which we'll get to in a little bit, with this particular film, is that there's another connection here. One of the sponsors of the Camden International Film Festival historically has been the Vermont College of Fine Arts,
Right.
at least their MFA film program. And they, I think, took off a couple of years from doing that, from that relationship, but they came back this year because largely because your film was premiering there and they wanted to sponsor that. And then I know that also this year they happen to have another alumni, Ian Chaney, who
yes.
premiered his documentary 13 Ways, which I also caught up with, and that I guess was enough for them to want to hop back on board. So
Yeah, I mean, I think it was. I cannot tell you because I don't know why they were not involved with the festival for a period of time, but they were very thrilled to get re-involved as
Off mic,
sponsoring it. And
sorry. I was going to say off mic that I know they went through changes in their marketing department,
Right.
and the people that decide that,
I see.
so it could have been that could have had something to do with it. I'm just guessing.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
That's true. You've reminded me. So, but anyway, VCFA was thrilled to get re-involved with the Camden International Film Festival as a sponsor, and we had my film and Ian Chaney's film, and he was an recent alumni. In fact, the festival included his thesis film for his MFA, 13 Ways,
Wow.
which
It's in the remarkable
I was
film.
involved with.
Uh-huh.
As a faculty member, I'm on the faculty at VCFA, and I was his faculty advisor during the making of that project. So I'm connected to it and proud
The
of
world
it.
keeps feeling smaller and smaller as we go on, right?
Right. So
Producer Craig Lowy might have okay. So Rachel Mills, okay, and Maya Tippett. She was listed as
co-director.
but she may have. She's also producer, and my friend Jessica Edwards, who's actually been on this podcast. Thank you, Siri. But Jessica Edwards has been on this podcast. She's quite a talented person, Jessica Edwards. If it's the same Jessica Edwards that I know, anyway, I'm pretty sure. But that just the last thing I want to say. That bowling alley where that short magnitudinous eruptus luminous is a shot took place regarding this fellow who's the bartender or a bartender there at this bowling alley, the Melody Lanes, which is in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, and I've had the occasion to go there many times, at least around half a dozen times. Take my son there or what have you. So it was nice to see it, but I never went into that bar. It's right there in the middle.
You have to wait till your son is a couple of years older, and then you can go into the bar together.
Yeah.
And I hope that
and point at him and I'll
the
say,
fellow's still there.
he needs a drink. Then I know he will never get served. See? Inside joke. You have to see it. It's a shame more people can't see it. Like, a short like that. I guess it can go on the website or her website or something like that. I mean, that's going to be... At least we have that.
I
Or
believe the film was showing this weekend at two festivals. One, the Camden Film Festival, and the other, the Coney Island Film Festival.
Right. Oh, that's where he was.
And that's where he was.
Yes, right. Yes.
With the other, with the co-director. So,
yeah.
It's a kind of film that I could imagine being out on the festival route at a number of festivals. It's beautifully
Absolutely.
made. It's very fun and surprising. So it's a terrific movie.
And it's interesting because I would imagine doing a film about a local, character can be potentially could stifle the potential for your short, because are other people from other outlying areas other areas gonna appreciate that without knowing the references and stuff like that? But it's not the issue here because he's that larger than life, and he's so amusing and so likable a character that
right.
transcends.
Which I would say are many of the characteristics that
Of
Tate
Tate-
Billings,
nice.
the subject of my film, has. I mean, I think Tate is...
Well done, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think Tate sort of is... I'm not quite sure. I mean, has maybe even a deeper philosophical bent, maybe a more offbeat sensibility. He's an outsider artist, so... But I thought there was also some connection between the two characters in that they are eternal optimists. Tate feels very strongly that he wants the film to inspire younger artists and to take a creative leap, and that was a very important aspect of the film for him, and I see that. Yeah.
Remind me how you first met Tate.
Well, my wife and I have had a place outside of the city. We live in New York, but we've had a place in the Catskills for more than 25 years. And he lives very close to us.
I see.
That's why it's called My Autonomous Neighbor. Nonetheless,
So you're the My. You're in the title. In other words.
I'm the My.
Okay.
Yeah, My Autonomous Neighbor.
And you're in the film too, by the way.
And I'm in the film a little bit. You hear me more than see me, nonetheless. So we have a lot of mutual friends in common. There are a lot of painters, artists, writers who live in Sullivan County. There are certain places like the Catskill Art Society and a couple of other small galleries where there are shows and people get together, and that's really where I met Tate. I think about 8 years ago now, at an opening. And so we stayed in contact. I mean, I would see him periodically, but I can't say that I knew him very well, but I certainly knew him. And then one day, this was about it's about 3 years ago, I guess. It was one day in summer, in July. I bumped into Tate walking on a street in Livingston Manor, New York, and he was cradling a huge number of toys that he had just found at a yard sale.
Oh, of course.
And
sure.
there was something wonderfully comedic about the image of Tate with all these toys, and we spoke briefly. He told me the significance of each and every one of them.
I'm sure he
in
did.
In great detail.
He elaborated.
He's an elaborator. And then I said, Tate, has anyone ever made a movie about you? And he said, no. And then I said, I'll call you tomorrow. And I think it was the next day that I arrived.
Really?
Yeah.
That's interesting because I know I've been talking to you, outside of this context of the podcast, but also on the show for probably a span of, I'm going to think possibly 5 years, I'm guessing. And I remember after your last documentary, let's just put it that way, your last feature documentary, that you were burnt out.
I was.
Because that one was exhausting in so many different ways, and people can go back and listen to those conversations because you describe what you were going through. So, in the last 10, 15 years, I've made, at this point, 3 or 4 films about mental illness and about drug addiction, and they're pretty heavy and intense movies. I'm Dangerous with Love, Methadonia, and then the last one being sorry. That's okay. It's not going to come out too much. We're in a car and we have there are 5 voices in this car at any time. So there's your wife, and there's Craig, and there's also Siri. So it's all right.
So the film was an autobiography of Michel Negroponte, which is a story about a woman with borderline. And I think by the time I got to the end of that film, there was something, I just felt like I had fallen into this very dark vortex, and I was exhausted. And I also just felt like I needed to sort of reinvent myself and find a new and different way to make films. And also, I mean, frankly, for years I've been telling myself I have to make a comedy. I have to make a comedy. I have to do something more comedic.
Right.
And I think I recognized in Tate from the very beginning that there was comedic potential just because of his huge persona and his intellect and his speed and also the artwork, and some of it is kitsch and funky. And
right.
So I really entered into that project with the intention of having a good time.
It shows in the film. There's a lot of humor in it, and partly executed by our friend Craig Lowy, who had a big hand in that.
Right.
In terms of the animation or the graphics or the what would
Motion
you call it?
graphics.
Motion graphics. Thank you.
Graphics, the composite.
Nobody can hear you.
If you don't aim the microphone in my direction, of course no one can hear me. So in terms of compositing, in terms of rotoscoping, in terms of green screen, there's actually a lot of high-tech technical things going on, but the point was to make these high-tech things look not high-tech, to look blended in with a kind of, not just the filmmaking style that Michel had developed for this film, but also for the artist Tate himself, whose work is kind of a little rough. So that was part of the fun also, was roughening up all these so-called special effects.
Yeah, I mean...
You have some of those circa 1950s sci-fi kinds of animation graphics that, so you would have seen, right, with the flying saucers and that kind of thing.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, there's a lot of sort of
It fits in
sci-fi films from the 50s and early 60s, and
right.
and that kind of informs some of the aesthetic and of not only the special effects but of the film too. And it's very appropriate because in terms of Tate and his way of thinking and his influences, he is alien-like. When he once told me that he was a space...
Self-described, yeah.
Yeah, he said he was a space alien. I still believe it on occasion.
But you know what? We all are, because we're all living in outer space, right? The irony is that we're a planet spinning in outer space, and we're aliens living on this planet, and we've traveled to other... Well, I don't think we've traveled to another planet yet, but we've traveled to a moon.
Traveled to other dimensions.
He may have done that. Yeah, we haven't done that.
The other thing, this is Craig again, is that in terms of whatever effects are used, they're not used for no purpose. They are actually to somehow try to illuminate the inner workings of Tate's imagination and his philosophical output. And that is really the biggest challenge, is to come up with something where you get to feel or think what he feels. And this is the challenge of any documentary filmmaker. How can you go beyond the surface of life and go a little bit deeper? And I think that's one of the challenges that this film has lived up to.
Actually, one of the big inspirations for me was Guy Madden's film.
Yes,
My Winnipeg.
Right.
And
it's also in The Forbidden Room. I don't know if you've seen it, but I think what you're referring to. But I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Well, he's also the executive producer of the film.
Oh, I can't.
Guy Madden. But
this one's for you, Guy, and I'll have to get him on again because he's now at VCFA as well. Thanks.
Yeah. He will be joining our faculty at VCFA.
That's wonderful.
In October of this year. So, I mean, what I found so extraordinary about My Winnipeg is that
it's a classic.
It's
in its genre.
Yeah, but I also thought, my God, this is a documentary about Guy Madden's imagination, and I'd never seen anything quite like it. And so that was the thing that, years ago when I saw the film and then I met Tate, I really wanted to see if we could, I could make a film that got inside this man's head. Or if not that, the other thing that I was sort of aspiring for was to make a film that almost put the audience inside one of his pieces of art, one of his collages.
Oh, I see.
So as if we're looking at the audience is experiencing the world around them from inside his artwork or inside his head. And I mean, these are kind of crazy ambitions, but I mean, to some extent, I think we've succeeded in creating an alternate universe within the film. And I call it a collage film about a collage artist, and so it uses a lot of his own techniques with hard juxtapositions, non-linear transitions. So those were adopted directly from his work, in terms of the way in which the film is made, and then using a lot of our own techniques that are inspired in some way by Tate. So
you stopped short, though, at actually having him participate in the post-production, though.
Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, maybe that would have been a cool idea to get Tate actually involved in some of the special effects, but I think from the very beginning he was pretty clear about it, and he said, this is your film, you make this film, and you do whatever you want. And I don't think he really wanted to be sort of more directly involved. He was curious to see what we would come up with, but I don't think
what's the exact opposite of your last experience.
Exactly. Well, the way in which a filmmaker and a subject collaborate on a film is as subtle and mysterious as, life itself. And sometimes it's fluid and seamless, and other times it's not. So I've had all of the above.
I'm just agreeing because I've participated in a few films with Michel at this point, and that's all I'll say about the previous film.
Okay. Yeah, but we're all happy to be focusing on this new film, and your subject. I gotten to know him over the weekend, and he at one point gave me a lift into town, even, and so and he's just very warm. And obviously still on this journey of being excited and giddy about experiences and learning and evolving. You don't see that a lot in guys that age.
Yeah,
he's living upstate or in these,
He's in his early 70s. He lives alone. But, he has...
Has he ever had a marriage or?
No.
Okay.
He almost got married years ago, but that didn't pan out.
Mm-hmm.
Nonetheless, he has such an inventive spirit and a curiosity. Tate lived in a truck for 18 years of his life. And...
Are you saying that...
literally.
Literally?
Literally.
He was a truck driver?
No. He lived basically in a large van.
Okay.
Oddly, it was when he was in the Army. And he was in the National Guard working as an electrician and doing electrical work and on radios and things of that nature. And then in order to save money, he lived in this van because they didn't provide housing when you're a full-time employee of the National Guard, which he was for over 20 years. And he was saving money to buy the house that he currently lives in Roscoe, New York.
But for 20 years, how did he... Oh, so in other words, at a certain point, he had enough money to buy a house, but he didn't have that house in mind 20 years before when he started saving.
No, I think he had some kind of
obvious
arrangement to sort of pay it off very slowly.
But
I
see.
He did actually live in the back of this large van.
Okay.
And, he spent a lot of time in libraries.
That had to affect his health, though. I mean, I can't imagine that.
Yeah. Well, he talks a little bit about it in the film.
Yeah.
The winters were pretty rugged, but
right.
He spent a lot of time in libraries, to keep warm and to read, use the facilities, I guess. But, he read extensively for those 18 years. I think he always has, but I mean, for those 18 in particular. And, unlike most of us, he remembers every single thing he has read. I mean, he has a mind that is extraordinary. So if you bring up a topic like Greek mythology, he can lecture you for hours on Greek mythology and also aspects of Greek mythology you have never heard of. And the same with astrophysics, with just about any subject you can think of.
If only our friend Ian Chaney had just talked to Tate, he could have saved himself all those other people. 13 different people. He could have just had... I'm sure Tate could have spoken for Ian's mother, even.
Yeah. I mean,
making reference to his film and
13 Ways.
which we'll do. But we'll be doing a segment with Ian.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, I think Tate is an amazing inspiration. You know, he can be grouchy, he can be a little difficult. You see that in the film, but that's part of his, you know, his persona, and I accept it.
Who isn't grouchy?
And I, you know, I'm very, very fond of Tate.
Well, that shows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
Do you guys have, at this point, have you have some ideas of where else you would like to show it, ideally? I mean,
well, you know, I think that we've had a pretty successful showing at Camden, and there are already a couple of invitations that have come in for additional festivals. But, you know, we don't have, at the moment, really any very specific plans.
Okay.
And, you know, if my feeling is that if worse comes to worse and there's no, the distribution plans, you know, putter out, whatever. I mean, I'd be perfectly happy to put the film up on a website, our website, so people can see it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, at this stage, that would be fine. And we're going to have a little merchandise page so people can buy Tate's artwork, and maybe he'll give me a small commission.
Mm-hmm. Oh, if you go through your
Yeah.
site. Just to shift gears for the moment, when did you become faculty at the Vermont College of Fine Arts? When did that happen? Because I all of a sudden I just heard that you were doing that. I didn't know you were.
I started, I think it's now 5 years. It's amazing how quickly one loses track of time. But I believe it's 5 years now. The program is going into its 8th year, I believe, of the film MFA program. We have a dozen MFA programs at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. This is one of them. You know, on average, we have 35 students in this 2-year program. I started there, again, I think 5 years ago. I have to go back and check my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
We're on campus. It's low residency, so we're on campus, you know, for a week in October and a week in April. And then for the 6 months in between, each faculty member is assigned, you know, 4, 5, or 6 students to work with on their projects one-on-one for the next 6 months. There's a schedule that's put together, and, you know, so they're deliverables. It's all very carefully organized. But, you know, from the very beginning, I was absolutely astonished by the quality of work that was coming out of the program, and also, you know, the profound commitment to nonfiction, fiction work, experimental work on behalf of the students. So I find myself even today, you know, working on really impressive films by younger people, and you know, it's a real thrill to be. There's something very magical about VCFA, and I don't really know exactly what it is that, you know, how the chemistry of all of this worked out, but it's a very special place, and I'm really amazed by, you know, the work. And for instance, Ian Chaney is one of them. I mean, Ian made 2 feature-length documentaries while he was an MFA student at the Vermont College of Fine Arts. One was the thesis film, which was at Camden very recently. Yesterday it premiered, which is called 13 Ways. And then he also completed a film that he'd been working on called The Most Unknown, which tracks, if I recall correctly, 13 scientists around the world.
13?
I think it is 12 or 13. It's an interesting...
9.
Oh, well, 9 is close enough to 13, isn't it?
I was glad. Well, 13 would have been weird because there would have been 2 different films.
Okay, 9.
There's. It says traversing disciplines from physics to psychology.
Right.
9 scientists share ideas and seek common ground by delving into deep existential questions.
Fantastic film.
I
And kind of an interesting experiment, you know. It reminds me a little bit of Jean Rouch, A Chronicle of a Summer. He sets up a premise, and he meets a scientist. It opens, I think she's a geologist, exploring caves in Italy, and he watches her work for a period of time, and then the 2 of them travel to the next scientist. And this is you know, so in other words, it's like a relay race of sorts that...
The exquisite corpse.
So the scientists sort of meet one another, often for the first time, and because they're in such different disciplines, they're scientists, but they're in different disciplines.
Right.
You know, it's an interesting way to explore the subject, and that's what he does. So anyway, Ian is really an amazing young filmmaker, and
another one of your students, I believe, unless I'm mistaken, is George Nicholas.
George Nicholas,
who's on this podcast.
Who you've done a podcast with.
Mm-hmm.
He was there he got his MFA. He teaches in New York. He's a cinematographer and a filmmaker, and very active. And yeah, he was another terrific student. I mean, what I should do is probably look at the list of students I've had in the last couple of years, and so I can remember everyone's name.
I know you don't want to botch
things
things
I
up.
know.
I just mentioned George because he was on the podcast.
Right.
But, you know, I
and
don't
Jason
expect
Rosenfeld. Who's
and
on
Jason, he was, that's right.
Yeah.
Because if you go back to those episodes, faithful listeners, you'll hear them talk about how much they got out of.
Well,
if you
I
go
think
back,
in all fairness, I think
they really speak quite admiringly about you and appreciatively. Let's put it that way.
I think they all love the program because it's incredibly inspiring,
right.
And they were terrific. So
terrific.
Anyway, so I'm a big fan of VCFA. I mean, I've taught over the years at NYU, School of Visual Arts, at Temple, and of all my teaching experiences, this is the one that I find the most exciting.
Yeah, I know. One thing that everybody is saying, and why I feel absolutely 100% behind this program, is because everybody comes on and describes it as a truly transcendent, magical place and experience, and they could never have imagined just how much they would have gotten out of it. Some of them just do it for practical purposes to get a master's degree so they can continue teaching film, on their own, and so they just do it for practical purposes, but they end up learning so much more about themselves, and they're grateful for that. Who wouldn't be?
Right. I mean, it's true, and I think a lot of it is the student body itself, and because we're bringing together a group of students from all over the country, some international students. For the most part, they don't know one another, and there's a chemistry that is created amongst the students as well. And some of the students are very seasoned filmmakers, in their own right.
Sure.
Looking to get an MFA because they'd like to teach in the future. Sometimes we have students who have relatively limited experience as filmmakers, but for the most part, we're dealing with MFA students who are very experienced at VCFA.
Mm-hmm. So, no plans on changing course? You're staying with the program for a while?
I'm definitely staying with the program at VCFA. Yes.
Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you, first of all. I you know how much I like you and appreciate you as a friend, as a filmmaker, and a conduit to the Vermont College. No, they've been terrific and very supportive of what I'm doing. So I'm only too happy that I said I'm going to interview Michel again because it just doesn't. It makes complete sense. He's got a new film, and you guys, and it's at Camden and the Vermont College. It's all. There's a.
And there were a lot of terrific films and filmmakers at the Camden Film Festival.
Sure,
so
yeah.
I'm sure you have a plethora of people to talk to.
Sure. Maybe I'll get invited back. That'd be great. I'd love to go back.
We can get you invited.
All right. Thanks, Michel.
You're welcome.
Thank you.